Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you happen to be located. Welcome to this week's Sip and Solve. My name is Dan Meter, and I head up our Experian Business Information Consulting team. So if you have your beverage of choice in hand, let's get started. In today's session, we'll be discussing three tips to find prospects that look like your best customers. Now, you might be thinking this is a no-brainer. You know, why wouldn't I want more customers that look like my best customers? But how you optimize identifying the lookalikes is really the tricky part, and it's very critical to the success of any campaign you run. So we'll be exploring a few tips today that'll combine a lot of science and maybe a little bit of art to create a data-driven outreach program based on a solid foundation of prospects that are most likely to respond. And we'll also touch on how to identify those that are most likely to respond now. Now, these are likely some pretty familiar challenges. Addressing these challenges through a combination of data and analytics are really fundamental to efficiently and effectively grow your business. In today's session, I'll be speaking most of the time on challenges number 1 and number 3 that are listed here. And I think almost by implication, we'll provide some insight on number 2. But the key thing to keep in mind is we really want to focus on finding lookalike prospects and the importance of creating a really deep understanding of your customers. Now, at the heart of these tips, and this will be a consistent theme throughout, will be a commitment to data-driven marketing. There are several stages that we'll dive into in more detail in the course of our chat. However, I want to point out some key messages to keep in mind as we go through this today. First of all, data matters. Aim for accuracy and coverage, both yours and any third-party data you use. This is really critical to create a solid foundation for any analytics you do. Segmentation is also crucial and can inform your channel strategy. It also allows you to use your resources more wisely. Segmentation can lead to better personalization, and personalization really has been proven to time and again be effective in converting prospects. And then lastly, it really is a continuous loop. As you measure success of a campaign, that data helps drive improvements and refinements which can help fine-tune your next campaign. This, of course, is a great application for machine learning because that will really help you pinpoint precise opportunities to improve customer experience, create new revenue streams, optimize content, and improve personalization. So let's dive into the 3 tips that we have for finding more lookalike customers. We'll expand on each of these over the course of the next several minutes. And tip number 1 is identifying your best performing customers. And that's really the crucial first step. But really, it's not maybe as easy as you might think, and we'll get into that in a little bit. There's a tremendous amount of business intelligence wrapped up in your data, but there's a process to extracting the most value, to using analytics to extract the most value. And when you can bring third-party data in, you can add a tremendous amount of lift in terms of prospect identification and targeting those that are most likely to respond. And our third tip is going to be about adding a dimension of knowing who is actually in the market for your product right now, which will allow you to target those most likely ready to buy. And of course, that can lead to reduced costs, but probably more important, accelerate time to revenue. Okay, tip number 1. Let's dive into the first one, identifying your best performing customers. Now, as with anything, when you ask for a subjective opinion on something like who are your best customers, you might get several different answers. Credit might say it's the ones that pay. Sales might say it's the ones that spend the most money with us. Finance might say it's the most profitable ones. Customer service might say it's the ones that complain the least, and on and on. So it's really crucial to decide first what a good customer looks like. And it's probably some combination, at least of the first 3, you know, those that will pay, those that will spend money, and those that will be the most profitable. The customer service folks, yeah, you kind of want to limit some of their pain, but certainly the first 3 are the most critical from a financial success standpoint. And this is where an analysis of your customer base really comes in handy. The insights you can produce from this analysis can provide you with really a fact base from which to decide what makes a good customer. And once you have that good customer profile in hand, you really want to see how that overlays against your current customers to see what segments ideally fit that definition of a good customer. Now, as we look further, there's a real process to pulling this together. I mentioned at the beginning how important data was, and data preparation really is the foundation of any analytics exercise. If you don't have that strong foundation, which means basically clean, accurate, well-populated data, your analysis isn't going to provide the kind of meaningful insight you need to be successful. Adding third-party data can be critical to refining your segmentation. Probably an obvious example is layering in credit scores to evaluate business risk. So you target those prospects that fit a certain risk threshold that you might have. Where you set that bar really should be based on your overall campaign strategy, and it's really an important data point to consider. Perhaps less obvious might be adding the buying behaviors of business owners or decision makers. And I'll give you, again, a pretty easy example here. Let's say you're marketing a small business card, and you can identify a segment of businesses with owners or decision makers who travel a lot. You might want to emphasize the travel rewards opportunities that come from using your card. And then lastly, and we're going to give you a little preview of tip number 2 here, you can overlay the results of this segmentation analysis onto a prospect list to better guide your overall campaign strategy. So let's move on to a simple example of what an analysis might look like. Note how it clearly segments the key characteristics of current customers to provide a solid profile of who you're selling to today. This is the baseline from which you want to develop your profile of who your best customers are. And this is a simple example. You can make this as complex as you'd like, adding more and more dimensions. But at the same time, it can get easy to overly complicate things. So it's important to be able to engage with an experienced set of hands who pretty much can help you stay out of a data wilderness. But I do want to restate the need for clean, accurate, well-populated data. Without that, the basis of everything you do in profiling your customers will not be sound. Any decisions made based on a questionable analytic foundation will result in missed opportunities, result in costly action, and ultimately suboptimal results. So, tip number 2, which we gave you a little preview of before, leveraging analytics and third-party data to determine your best prospects. On this slide, you'll see an example profile of those customers that you may have defined as your best customers. You can see our example combines firmographic, payment data, and risk criteria. And then once you have that, the next step is to apply those characteristics to a prospect list. Now, that prospect list can be from your own existing customers. In the case of an upsell or cross-sell program, you may want to find those who are not buying a particular product, but exhibit characteristics of those that do buy that product and meet a certain risk threshold, are in good credit standing, such as having no 90-plus day delinquencies in the last 12 months. Or you can purchase a third-party list and overlay your criteria on that list. This is a great way to manage a new customer acquisition campaign because you target those that look most like your current best customers. But I think the key point here is that the profile you create from your analysis really provides a level of business intelligence that should translate into a much more successful campaign. Now, a question you need to ask is the market opportunity based on this profile of your best customer segments. The good news is there are tools in the market that allow you to quickly visualize what that opportunity would be. Here you see that based on the criteria associated with a particular customer profile, the state of Illinois looks to have the largest number of potential lookalike prospects. In fact, there are several states that have over 10,000 prospects. So this allows you to quickly assess the magnitude of the opportunity and also allows you to tailor your outreach strategy to very specific geographies, informing things like personalization, content, and channel strategy. If it turns out that there are only a few prospects who actually fit your definition of a good customer, either because you already have a large share of the market or maybe your criteria was too strict, you can use this intelligence to revisit your segmentation strategy. And you may decide to redirect your resources to another campaign or initiative because there just doesn't seem to be enough opportunity. But the important thing is through data-driven insights, you're making the right decisions for your business, and ultimately that's really what you need to be able to do. Now let's consider another step that will really enhance your ability to optimize your investment, and that's who's most likely to respond. Understanding who's likely to respond to your specific outreach is something that really isn't well served by a generic one-size-fits-all approach. You know, your portfolio is unique, your customers are unique, so to prioritize who is most likely to respond from the pool of prospects you've identified, you really need to consider a custom model that will pinpoint the likelihood of a response. This slide shows a sample of attributes on the left side, on the right side, that were found to be most predictive of a response to a campaign that was the subject of a consulting engagement we did. As you can see, our decision service sciences team, through a combination of our experience and our client's experience, came to agreement on the various attributes that were available and also met the criteria around accuracy and being well populated. And these attributes were modeled to create a score that that indicated the likelihood that a particular business would respond. So now I'll kind of show you how all this comes together. The example on the slide shows how you can matrix risk scores and response scores to identify the prospect populations in various segments. And those segments have been defined by the likelihood of approval and the likelihood of response. So if you look, the scores on the left side are the response model scores, and across the top are the risk scores. So we just kind of cross matrix those to see how they line up. As you'll see, 1% of the total population was in the lowest risk, but also the most likely to respond. So those are like those are the gold label, gold star clients for this particular campaign. And looking at the data in this way really helps you identify the prospects that will get you to your campaign goals, but in an objective and data-driven manner. From here, you can decide where to set thresholds for different prospect tiers and understand how many prospects will be in each tier. In this example, the prospects in the blue cells were those that were chosen for a specific offer, and they represent about 20% of the prospect pool. And this is where the art comes in, because where you set the thresholds is more art than science, perhaps, and is likely going to be based on your campaign strategy. So now tip number 3, our last tip, would certainly be a valuable step to learn who is in the market right now. This intent-based approach involves marketing a product or a service based on the prospect's intent to make a purchase decision, demonstrated by their recent actions and recent behaviors. This is especially true when it comes to B2B and selling high-ticket items to powerful decision makers. And because of the dynamic nature of B2B data, we found that there are some good predictors that indicate when someone is likely to be in the market for a particular type of product. We also find that looking at those predictors over time can help you fine-tune your strategy for how you might engage a prospect, depending on where they are in a buying cycle. At my next session on August 8th, we'll be discussing this in more detail, but suffice to say this is an important step that can deliver great efficiency and improve resource management. So that's all I have for today. If you have any questions or want to learn more, please don't hesitate to reach out to the link you see on the screen. And don't forget to stay in the loop on future Sip and Solve sessions. So I hope you all enjoyed your drink of choice, and thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.